Namaskar. I'd like to set the tone of this discussion by first quoting a line from one of Hinduism's most beloved books, the Ramcharitmanas. Par hit saris dharam nahi bhai, par peeda sam nahi athamai. Which basically means that there is no greater faith than uplifting others, and there's no bigger pap than hurting others. So, yet again, India is at an inflection point. This time, Hinduism is at the center of many debates. And it's interesting because while, we've become quite habitual about binaries in our life, I would suggest that most of India or most Hindus in India, or frankly, practitioners of any faith, are carrying on with their lives mostly and, fall into the sort of centrist mode where, whose voice has really kind of almost evaporated in this, in these times. So here, I think we'll stay away from too much of the politicization of Hinduism because mujhe jail nahi jana hai, I have to go back to Bombay. But let's start by me asking Pavan, how do you feel about being a Hindu today? Both as a believer and as a very serious writer on the subject.
No, let me be honest with you. I'm very proud to be a Hindu. And I'm proud for what I think are the right reasons. I have great faith for all religions, but I can say for the Hindu faith that there are few religions which have such a strong foundation for so long of application of mind. So Hindu Dharma or Hindu faith or Hinduism is not about certitudes only, not a diktat, not a fiat, not prescriptive. If you start from the Nasidiya Sukta of the Rig Veda, which is more a rumination on what could be the truth, the first written text of Hinduism. Now science dates it to 4000 BCE. It does not say this is right or wrong. And similarly, if any of you, I'm sure most of you are aware, we have no one system of Hindu philosophy. We have 6 systems of Hindu philosophy. 3 of our foundational texts are dialogic. The 3 foundational texts are the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutra. The Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita are dialogic, and the Brahma Sutra always admits the opponent's point of view. And the best part of Hinduism, as I see it, in terms of its foundations and why I am proud of it, is that it's open and eclectic and inclusive. In other words, the Charvaks, also around the same time as the 6 systems of Hindu philosophy, say that the Vedas are untruths. And the Charvaks are part of Hinduism. The Tantric thought, which is totally esoteric in its practice, is part of Hinduism. And that is why also 2 great religions at that time, Buddhism and Jainism, could come up because the Hindu faith does not see them as an implacable challenge which must be suppressed. It's open. So I feel proud to be a Hindu. And I quoted one line just now, I'll take a minute more. I said Ekam Sat. The 3 Mahavakyas of the Upanishads themselves are an eye-opener. Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, the wise people call it by different names. It's a revolutionary thought for its times. When you enter parliament, the first thing you see emblazoned on the wall, which no politician reads, is Udara Charitanam Vasudhaiv Kutamukam. For the big-hearted, the entire world is your family. And the 3rd Mahavakya of the Upanishad is Ano Bhadraha Krativo Yantu Vishvata. Let good thoughts flow to me from all directions. So it is for this reason that I am proud to be a Hindu. I am less than proud to be a Hindu today when we as Hindus are not sufficiently equipped to challenge those who misinterpret Hinduism. we are not sufficiently well informed of our own religious, intellectual and practical tradition to be able to say, no, this interpretation is wrong, and if you consider yourself to be a takedar of Hinduism, what you are saying is wrong. We should have the ability to do it. And sometimes when that is not done, a great religion is hijacked from its course. And that is what occasionally makes me feel that Hindus themselves need to be more informed about their religion.
Thank you, Pavan. That was really remarkably true. As a Hindu, I think you're echoing the views of many of us here, which brings me really to Shaunaka, who runs an educational center which attempts to sort of do what you're suggesting, which is to inform people, both Hindus and otherwise, on the philosophies, the tenets of this faith. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the education on Hinduism, how you go about it? Do you choose to bring religiosity into it, or do you sort of like teach it as a philosophy, the texts as classics or as prescriptive religious texts? So that's the first part of my question to you, Shaunaka. And the second is that what are some of the ways in which one can educate people, I should say, not just Hindus, but people, about the extraordinary belief systems that are so counterintuitive to, our modern life in many ways?
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm honored to be on a stage with such luminaries. So our centre in Oxford, just by some quirk of fate, Oxford has the best educational karma in the world. So the fact that we have a centre there for Hindu studies, we didn't realize it when we started, but this was the first academic centre for Hindu studies in the world. And the reason was Hindu studies didn't exist in India at the academic level. This was a decision made at the time of partition by the Indian government. We can argue back and forth about that, but it is what it is. But consequently, the country doesn't have the intellectual vocabulary to begin to discuss this. So anyone can claim anything about Hinduism, and what can we say? And that's the difficulty of not studying the subject. It's interesting, in Oxford there's a Centre for Jewish Hebrew Studies, there's a Centre for Islamic Studies, a Centre for Christian Studies. These traditions put a lot of money into education, because if you don't invest in education, then try ignorance. You have to invest in education, otherwise culture can't develop. And it's the two maybe principles behind social theory coming from Indian intellectual traditions, coming from Indian heritage, are vairagya and vidya. Now, if you have knowledge, then you begin to restrict your life, because you begin to realize, actually, I should act like this, not this, like this, like this. So vairagya becomes automatic. But if we don't have knowledge, if we haven't delved into the text, then that discipline doesn't arise, and we don't have the ability to, as Pavan said, counter any idea that just pops up out of nowhere. When young people in this country, as the educational system develops, when they want to know about Hinduism, they end up going to their grandmother, their masis. Their grandmother isn't a philosopher, isn't a theologian, and they have difficulty with that. So in Oxford, because they're intelligent, they want an intelligent, evidence-based answer, a critical answer. And that's what we do in Oxford. We've created a course at the highest academic level, a number of courses, where we've graduated about 32 PhDs from Oxford, or DPhils as they call them in Oxford. And these are properly accredited scholars. And this scholarship, these need to be teachers in India, in Indian institutions. But the difficulty we have is that in Indian institutions, and Pavan and Pariksith will attest to this, in the humanities, it's so depleted that we don't have the critical faculty. We don't have the theories and the methods. And because religion has never been taught in this country, you said, do we teach religion or philosophy? In an Indian context, for us to study Hindu cultures, you can't separate religion from philosophy. It doesn't make any sense, because the Indian approach intellectually is always holistic. You're always bringing everything together so you can see the full picture. Taking out something in the name of secularism or any other modern theory, this is an intellectual theory arising in Europe for interesting reasons, but it doesn't make any sense here. So you have to look at the theological, the philosophical, the cultural in the whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, otherwise...
The lived reality.
The lived reality. So that's how we teach it in a way that is very unusual for the Western Academy. We encourage all our PhD students to study the subject, write their thesis, and then question the theory and method by which they had to study.
That's really interesting, because it is indeed a very, I mean, we've heard this phrase before, that it's a way of life. It's much more than that. It's a whole body of thought. It's a lens. It's an approach. It applies equally to the person who picks up a stone, puts, a smear of color on it and makes it into a god, as much as it does to the scholar sitting in an ashram and studying the Upanishads in Sanskrit. I mean, it has a way of somehow just like crossing all these many differences.
And now you can study it in Oxford University, get an Oxford degree, and be a world expert in a subject where there are few world experts. So why let anyone become a world expert? There's so many people who have studied it in the West, have become world experts, and then India says, what are you doing being a world expert in our religion? Well, the fact is, who got up off their asan and did that work? You know, if Indians want to take over the subject, come, study it, take over, become the experts.
Well, without going into the whole reason why this happened, it was, a post-partition, very well-intentioned desire to create a country that sort of did not dwell on religion. But this separation between faith and reason is genuinely absurd, right? Because it's sort of like putting these two categories into categories, whereas in fact they dictate the way we approach life in different aspects of ourselves. So rather than having a layered approach, it's become a this or that approach. And I'd love Dr. Pariksith to talk about that as a doctor, because you have clearly transcended that difference by sort of studying this with a very open mind. And you're a practicing doctor. And so this divide between the sort of, between faith and reason is something that I'd love you to share in your experience.
So might just add a few more things, or take the line of thought developed by Pavan Ji and His Royal Highness Shaunaka Ji. One is the approach. How do we approach an ancient body of work that is still evolving? We need to be in a stance of intense questioning. My whole approach would be, do not accept anything as the truth unless you verify it yourself. You have to be able to live it, experience it. Then it transcends thought. Similarly, the same thing with faith. The probing should be intense enough that it becomes a real experience for you. That's the beauty of what we call Sanatan Dharma. We use the word Hinduism, although Hinduism has a geographical context, which is okay. Although there are some scholars who take the word Hindu as having come from the word Indu. And Indu actually is the moon, the one that is lit up with light, the one that is Somarasa. This is the land of Indu. This is the land of light. There are some scholars who think that. I do not know if that's true or not. But if we take it out of the geographic context and come to the original approach, starting from the Veda, it is fascinating, it is beautiful, it is multidimensional. So, for example, if I give you the first shloka of Agni Suktam, and please bear with me for a moment, but just listen to it as music and literature. Agnimi ire purohitai yajnasya deva mritvijam hota aram ratna dhatamam. Now, how many of us know how to chant this? My podcast with the young people nowadays, or with professionals on the Gita, is first learn to appreciate the sound. Learn to appreciate the genius of the language, where every varna, every alphabet has a significance. We don't know that. So if we don't appreciate the beauty by questioning it deeply, we just take it that this is the way it is, right? Now let me come back to your question after having given my spiel. Fortunately, as a physician, I cannot be distracted by people's faith or belief systems, because in a way, I'm dealing with a human being with all his history, but I'm mostly dealing with the body, and of course the psychology behind, the culture behind, all the practices, the habits, but I have to be neutral. In fact, I don't even have the time to think about it, unless it is affecting their health. So that makes it easy for me. And when you are in real practice, the beauty of science, which I'm going to let the secret out, 99% of medicine has nothing to do with the science of it. It is more an art and a connection and engagement with the patient, and most of it is common sense. As Yogi Berra would say, 98% of this is 80% mental. So, we have to go to common sense as a physician, and we have to learn the art of engagement with the patient. And there, all the barriers of religion, denomination are out. I don't have to have faith in the medicine because I've practiced it. I don't have to believe that I give this medicine and this person will behave this way, because I have practiced it. That's why we call it practice.
Is there a point at which, even as a doctor, as a physician, you sort of like turn to something like a higher power in dealing with the patient?
Of course, all the time. And my patients don't know this, but every time I go, it is an invocation, so that I become an instrument. And honestly, reality is, I know very little. The human body is vast, is mysterious. There is really very little we know. We're just beginning to understand the cellular functions, the mitochondrial, the changes that are happening. We are just beginning. The genetics, the epigenetics. So you have to allow yourself to become, if I may use the word from the Gita, become just a nimitta.
Beautiful, thank you. Pavan, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, you've written that extraordinary book, The Great Hindu Civilization, and I'm really grateful for it personally, because I think it just gave us such a kind of a pummeled insight into this whole intellectual body of thought. What, according to you, is the central unifying narrative within Hinduism, which manages to tolerate all the diversity, the hundreds of Ramayans, so both within Hinduism and when it comes to other faiths, how does Hinduism navigate diversity?
Well, diversity, Namita, is inherent in another substructure of Sanatana Dharma. And that is the great interplay between Nirguna and Saguna. Nirguna is Advait, non-dual. It's one. It's pulsating, cosmic consciousness, Nirguna, attributeless. It's Adrisht, Achintya, Anant. It's Nirvishesh Chinmatram, undifferentiated consciousness. It's Purna, it's complete, and it permeates all reality, animate and inanimate. I'm talking of at least the most powerful school of Hindu thought, which is Advaita. which is Vedant, who happen to be sponsors of the JLF. Well, Vedant says that Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. You are not who you think you are, because anything which is ephemeral or transitional or unstable cannot be the truth. And therefore there is only one truth, that. And that, it says, is Chid and Anand, bliss and awareness. As Adi Shankaracharya sings, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. In many religions, you are talking of diversity to assert that I am Shiva. Bliss and awareness, which is in me as Atma, in the world, in the cosmos as Brahm. So therefore I am Shiva. If in any other religion to assert that I am Shiva would be heresy, blasphemy. At the same time as Adi Shankaracharya in the 8th century in the Middle East, there was a Sufi saint who said, Anul Haq, I am the truth. He was decapitated. I don't mean to comment on all religions are great, I'm talking of the Hindu faith. So one is Nirguna, and because we are anchored so strongly in it, we allow the human imagination to play with every other diversity, because we know it will not dilute that one belief in Nirguna. So therefore, we will take a stone and worship. We worship the river, we worship the mountain. The West used to make fun of us. We have 3 lakh deities, gods and goddesses in the most bizarre roops. That is because we are not afraid to give form to the human imagination, because we are anchored in the belief that that divine power has no attributes. So we can give it any attributes. That is the diversity. But I just want to briefly touch, because when you see practiced Hindu faith, there are some concepts which are very important for us. They are original. I say they are maulik soch, the power of original thought. The first is Nirgun Sagun, as I told you. The second is the 4 Purusharths of the Hindu worldview: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. You can't, even Confucius could not have imagined a more balanced life. Vatsyayan, who wrote the Kama Sutra, is asked in the first chapter by an imaginary questioner, why do we need this book? And he says, if a man or a woman practices the first 3, Dharma, Artha, Kam, in proportion and not in exclusion, as part of a balanced life, you will reach the 4th, Moksha. Now, this is something we need to internalize in our life. I may mention that tomorrow I have a small novel coming out here called The Lady Who Carried the Monk Across the River. And one of the themes it explores is the great balance between the transcendence of desire and the presence of desire, which in the Hindu faith has been examined by application of mind. The third are the 4 stages of a person's life. It accepts, the Hindu faith, that you will be born, you will grow older, and so it is a very pragmatic faith. And it accepts diversity, to answer your question, because I narrated to you in my first reply that the very foundation of the Hindu faith is not dogmatic. वो तो अब बन रहा है.
So what about diversity in the way it navigates or deals with other faiths, which is a very significant question for our times?
Well, Buddhism was always afraid that the Hindu faith may consider it to be part of it. In fact, Buddha, as you know, was considered to be the 9th or the 8th? 9th avatar of Vishnu. Adi Shankaracharya was called by his critics in his time as a klepto-Buddhist. So, I mean, the Buddhism denies the Atma. the very foundation of the Advaita school of thought. And yet there is so much common between the two that ultimately Hinduism doesn't have to accommodate. It's an extension.
Shunyata and Purnata is one in a sense.
In a sense. So, similarly with Jainism, the only time we had a clash, and we must be fair to admit it, was when the Turkic invasion took place. The invaders came at that time as proselytizers, and as they caused tremendous pillage, plunder and destruction in the name of religion. There is no point glossing over the facts of history. But again, it is something of the soil of this country that over a period of time, a degree of syncretization occurred. And that syncretization allowed even those who came as invaders and stayed on to become a part of the overall Indian, let us say, holistic reality of which the Hindu faith is the central pillar. And you had that the Sufi movement in Islam, which is greatly related to the Bhakti movement. Pariksith, you said about Sanskrit and the way it should be read. For 600 years, we had the Bhakti movement, Shaunaka. 600 years after the invasion initial invasion of Islam, the religion and spirituality was taken out of the cloistered sanctum sanctorum of Sanskrit and taken to the lingua franca of the people in their own languages, shunning ritual, only speaking of bhakti, that faith you were talking about, surrender. And across India for 600 years, Namdev, Tukaram, Surdas, Tulsidas, Chandidas, Vidyapati, Allama Prabhu, Basavanna, Mirabai, Antal. They all lived and spoke and sang in their own languages. In an inclusive manner, their leading council consisted of women and people of the lower caste. So this is a religion that if it does not accept diversity, it will die.
So we don't need to go into the politicization of it because...
No, we do. I'm sorry, we do.
Let's get back to that because that's going to become
I'll tell you the reasons why, if you want me to.
Of course, please.
The reason is that increasingly what is happening in today's competitive democratic politics is that religion is being used for short-term electoral gain. Sachai hai.
So we have to...
I've been a practicing politician. I've been a member of parliament after I left the foreign service. So whether it's minority vote bank politics or it's majority vote bank politics, elections can be better won if you can make two communities fight and consolidate your vote banks. That empowers extremists on every side of every religion. And the poor mainstream that you were talking about, having not read enough of Hindu the faith or of any other faith mostly, are puppets in their hands. That's why I say we must know more about our own religion, because then we can counter these tendencies.
So maybe we can rely on the law of karma to take care of the bad people who are doing bad things. Shaunaka, would you talk about, the idea of, diversity and faith and how... I just love the idea that you don't have to be a Hindu to follow Hinduism. And you have clearly made a very elegant sort of a departure from whatever your birth faith was into this. But how do you believe that interfaith dialogue can exist in an elegant way, in a nurturing and nourishing way, in a way that children learn respect for all, not just mankind, but all sentient and insentient beings, which are essentially the tenets of the original scriptures of Hinduism. So can you talk about just interfaith dialogue and the practical reality of how we can bring that about, both in India and outside?
Yes, thank you. So interfaith dialogue, let's talk about it in purely Indian terms, and let's talk about it within Hinduism. So My guru is in Gujarat. His name is Akila Lokesh Rasamalai Vishnu Swami. And then down in Chennai, I'm visiting Chennai and someone's trying to talk to me. They're speaking in Tamil, I speak in Gujarati. I eat dokla, they're eating, idli. So completely different cultures, completely different languages, essentially completely different religions. So how do you begin to talk? So when I mention my guru's name, they don't know who I'm talking about. The only question that they can ask that's relevant is, what is your sadhana? What is your spiritual practice? If I say I rise at 4 in the morning, I chant, I do yoga, I do meditation, I read scripture, I'm a vegetarian, etc., then, okay, Paka, practitioner of some kind. Now, if I go down and I say I'm Christian, and they also don't know what a Christian is, and then they'll say the same question, what is your sadhana? And then I say, if I'm a Cistercian Christian monk, I get up at 4 in the morning, I say a prayer to Jesus, not asking for anything, just praising him, thanking him. I'm also a vegetarian, and I also spend my days serving others. That's also pretty paka. So you're looking at the practice of the person, not what they're calling themselves. Their name is irrelevant. So you're asking really, what is your darshan? And that's the Indian word that we use for the equivalent of philosophy. So philosophy means, it comes from the Greek philokalia, to love knowledge. But darshan means to see. And each of us is seeing individually. Our seeing is based on, everyone here in the audience is looking this way, we're looking that way. We're all seeing something different. So how many ways of seeing are there in this room? There are as many as there are people. There are as many worldviews in this room as there are people. There are as many religions in this room as there are people. That's basic Indian thinking. That's Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh, basic Indian thinking. So how can you not have interreligious dialogue? Because it means I'm dialoguing with every individual I meet is its separate religion. And I have to have a dialogue with that person. What's your understanding of Dharma? What's your part to play in this world? Because according to the Vedic idea of Rita, we don't talk about Rita, we don't study Rita, but Rita is
Why don't you explain what Rita is to the audience?
Rita is from the Rig Veda, is the idea of cosmic order. There is an assumption that there is cosmic order. If that's correct, then we are all interconnected. We're all interrelated. Everything predated us, and it will continue on after us. So we're only coming for a short period of time. So the question arises, what is our part to play? And every individual has to answer that question. We're all very small cogs in a big machine. And Pariksith's cogness is different than mine, and different from Pavan's and Namita's. So we all have to answer the question. That individuality it requires dialogue. It requires relationship. So that's another, just to complement what Pavan said, that's another basis for dialogue. Another basis is going into the Bhakti traditions from the Advaitin tradition. So the Advaitin tradition, one very important school, but there are so many important schools. In the Bhakti traditions, the traditions of love of God, God is in terms of Krishna or Shiva or Ram or so many manifestations that we can attach ourselves, or Ishtadev. So if we have this relationship of love with God, we're developing this relationship, then anything connected with God is important to us. Anything connected with God is everything.
Sure. Shaunaka, actually, Parikshit, I'm going to ask you something, which is that you've been living away from India, and, Hinduism has sort of like, as always, found very unusual and different ways of expression here. And the current young people have gotten into something called bhajan clubbing, which is kind of hysterical, but it's really widespread and gaining. So basically, it's just, the new version of the bhajan mandali, but it incorporates like rave parties, etc. And, the whole idea of like dancing and clapping and singing to Ram bhajans and other, kinds of bhajans. So I'm just curious to hear, like you look a little bewildered at the idea, but it's very real. And I'd love to hear your view on this.
So let me go back to our roots. right? We are multidimensional even in our art. Our poetry. For example, the first verse from the Rig Veda I quoted, which really means I adore Agni. Agni is my purohita. Agni is my officiant. Agni is the invoker. It's a very weird and mysterious statement. You are worshipping Agni, but Agni is the one who's performing it. Agni is one who's managing the whole thing, and Agni is the one who's invoking the sacrifice. Think about it for a moment. What a multi-dimensional curveball or googly in India has been thrown at you. People don't understand. We have just taken the statement and said, okay, this is it, Agni I'm worshipping. This is Agni that is within you. It is the divine within you. It is your pure consciousness that you adore. That is the officiant. That is the one who is invoking. That is the one who is helping the yajna. And yajna is, the real meaning is Vishnu.
And it's also your digestive system, so it's a very important.
Agni is at every level. Agni is at the level of your cells. Agni hides in the water. This is a story.
So tonight we're going bhajan clubbing, huh?
So if that's what, let's finish this, if that's what floats their boat, I'm okay with it, as long as they go deeper within themselves, or if that is their natural flow, their swabhava, then they will find their swadharma through their swabhava. Follow it. If that's your heart, you follow the way of your bliss.
Thank you. Pavan, we have to get back to some controversial subjects. Can you comment on both gender and caste in the context of Hinduism?
Well, there are four things. As a proud Hindu, I feel all of us who are Hindus or even not should think more about, because we are discussing the Hindu way of life. First of all, the continuation in an otherwise eclectic and inclusive faith of gender discrimination, of which in recent times laws are there, and certainly a great deal of emancipation has taken place, but it is still very prevalent and almost has the sanction of some religious injunction or the other. It was not there. Till 1st century CE, Namita, you had no evidence really of gender discrimination. And you had women saints speaking in Janak's Darbar and questioning Yagnavalkya. You know the story of Maitreyi. It's in the Upanishads. So one is gender discrimination. Second is caste discrimination. Again, latest scientific theory shows until the 1st century CE, there was, from the scientific analysis of skeletal remains, you can infer that there was a considerable amount of exchange and interchange between castes. But it got institutionalized into an oppressive hierarchy and continues even today. In spite of our laws, we should fight to erase it. You'll be surprised. And nobody quotes that of Veer Savarkar. Those who support Veer Savarkar speak of his 3-page tract, little essay on Hindutva. But all his writings, the corpus of his writings was on the reform that is needed within Hinduism. For this, I will put him at par with Mahatma Gandhi. Veer Savarkar said there are 7 fetters, 7 bediyan, Sparsh Bandi, Beti Bandi, Vyavasai Bandi, etc., which have reduced the Hindu faith far below what its original thought was. We have to erase it. The third thing that I feel we need to all think about is that in spite of coming from that tradition of eclecticism, why do we see in our current life such shrinking space for sabhya samvad, civilized discourse? Have any of you put on your televisions recently and watched the news? I'm sure some of you have. I mean, it's a disgrace to the Hindu faith or to any faith. Adi Shankaracharya and Mandan Mishra, who disagreed on whether Gyan Marg is better or Karm Kand Marg is better, did not go and abuse each other. They sat down for a Shastrarth that went on for weeks and has defined the course of Hinduism.
That's why we have Jaipur Lit Fest for those.
Yeah.
Let's have some questions.
So Sabhya Samvad. And last thing.
Yeah.
We must be vigilant against intolerance in the Hindu faith. I'll just quote a line of a poet. We must be aware of it because it is not good for the country, not good for us, not good for any faith. And it is not a part of our tradition. The lines are very simple. अगर आप थोड़ा बहुत हिंदुस्तानी समझते हैं, it's an Urdu couplet. आग न तेरी है न मेरी है. This fire is neither yours nor mine. आग को मत दे हवा. Don't fuel that fire. राख अगर मेरा घर हुआ, if my house is burned down, तेरा घर देखेगा कौन? Who will protect yours? This is something we should be aware of and be vigilant against.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful way to end. Let's start with this young person here.
Barack Obama carries Hanuman with him. Sunita Williams carries Ganesha with her. So which god will you choose to carry with you? All.
Whomever your heart attaches itself to.
Thank you.
Whatever, follow your bliss. It can be an image, it can be a non-image, it doesn't matter.
Pavan, tell us.
If you interchange them, the gods will not mind.
Yes, sir.
My question is to Pavan, sir. Sir, if a young Hindu, let it be male or female, wants to understand Hinduism in today's world, they will have to go through a lot of Upanishads and books. So how I summarize it as if we only read and understand Bhagavad Gita, just because it's the voice of God himself, we can live a good Hindu life. I just want to know your views about it.
You know, the Bhagavad Gita, in my view, is in religion one of the world's greatest books on how you can deal with the essential existential human dilemma. कि पता नहीं, सामान 100 बरस का पल की खबर नहीं. What is going to happen tomorrow, we don't know. How do we go through this life? The Bhagavad Gita teaches you Nishkam Karma. Do your work as consecrated action without thinking of the reward. That is the best book to make you live life, how to live life. But I would recommend, purely selfishly, that if you want to learn, read my Adi Shankaracharya and,
Yes, ma'am.
and the great Hindu civilization.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is to you, Pavan sir. You've been talking about Advait, and you are also praising Bhagavad Gita, and I'm sure you must have read Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, it's being said, Bhagavan Uvacha. And Krishna, in Bhagavatam, it is being said, Krishna tu Bhagavan Swayam. So how do you relate to it? On one side, you're saying, God is Advait, and here, these are the scriptures which are talking about Krishna as the God. So how do you want me to, understand this?
I'll tell you, very simple answer. In your belief in Advait, the non-dual, attributeless Nirgun, is never a barrier to your devotionalism to a personal God, because that personal God is a manifestation of that Nirgun. So, usme contradiction kya hai? You know what Tulsidas says in Ramcharitmanas says, aguna saguna doi brahma swarupa. The nirgun and the sagun are two aspects of that same Brahm. Aguna saguna doi brahma swarupa akatha akatha anadi anupa. So there's no difference. In that stone you see that, and in that you see this. डिफरेंस तो हमारे माइंड का है. जैसे उस बहुत ही स्वीट बच्चे ने पूछा कि गणेश और हनुमान में क्या फर्क है. भाई दोनों दोस्त हैं.
I think one is more abstract and one allows you to engage with a very real story. That's about it. Yeah. Yes, Shaunaka.
Yeah. Just to complexify this, because if this is to be a true Vada, a true discourse, then the Advaitin school is going to be one answer, but of course the Bhagavad Purana, it has 230 commentaries, the most commented book in Indian literature. And it is said by scholars, Indian scholars, to be the most influential book in Hindu thought. But no one studies it. But most of the commentaries are from a Vaishnava perspective, which means they will take this statement, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, as this appearing in the first canto of the book, this is the basis of the whole book. So when you get to the 10th canto, the pastimes of Krishna, if you don't take that seriously as Bhagavan being Krishna, the rest of it doesn't make sense. So there's so many ways to approach this book, so many ways to appreciate this book. And this is the essence of Hindu thought, that you're going to get so many interpretations, 230 different commentaries, all making different points. That's the beauty of the tradition. That's the educational value. If you want to understand Hinduism, you look at it from every angle of vision. You hear Pavan in his passion, and he's going to make this point about Advait, but then you're going to get me passionately making this point about Bhakti, that you have to have initiative, and it's about love, it's about relationship, it's about two, not one.
Why are you making us fight? I've never contradicted Bhakti.
No. And I've never contradicted Advait.
Now we have to raise our TRPs, but I think we're going to now launch.
Let me add something more to it.
Shaunaka, we have to launch your book.
Yes.
I mean, Pariksith, we have to launch your book.
The one manifesting as many, the one in many, the many as one. It's not one or the other. It's one and many. It's unity in diversity, diversity as unity.
This is typical Hindu incomprehensibility.
I think in India, for whatever exists, the opposite is always true, and it's such a liberating feeling. We're now going to launch a book on Sri Aurobindo, written by Dr. Pariksith